وَلِلرَّسُولِ إِذَا دَعَاكُمْ لِمَا يُحْيِيكُمْ. Right? To respond to the legislation of Allah, to the law of Allah Azza wa Jal. Because the law of Allah Azza wa Jal is also something in which there is life. So for example, the law of al-qisas, the law of retribution, وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقِسَاسِ حَيَاتٌ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. That in the law of retribution, there is life for you, O people of intelligence, in order that you may have taqwa, that you may fear Allah. Qatada, rahimahullah, he said about this, that Allah made retribution. What is the law of retribution? The law of retribution, al-qisas, is that if someone damages you, injures you, then you have the right to injure him in an equal like manner. If someone damages your eye, you can damage his eye. Someone damages your ear, you damage his ear. If someone takes the life of a member of your family, you have the right to take the life of that person, right, who committed that crime. Now this is al-qisas. This is the law of retribution, which is justice. So Qatada says Allah has made this qisas as life, meaning something that preserves life. And He made it to be a lesson for the people of intelligence. And within it is an admonition for the people of ignorance and foolishness. Those who, He says, how many people are there who have thought of doing something evil or some crime or something, and had it not been for the fear of al-qisas, meaning he knows that if he does this crime and he wrongs somebody in their body, injures them or kills them, that he's going to be given the same. Right? So upon thinking about that, then he's kept away from committing that evil. And through this, Allah has kept servants of His away from others, meaning away from committing oppression and crime against them. And Allah never commanded any command, any order, ever, except that it is a command of rectification for the world and the hereafter. And Allah never prohibited any affair, except that this affair is corruption, fasad. Whatever Allah prohibited, it is fasad, corruption. And Allah is more knowledgeable of that which rectifies His creation. So, obviously included within the Quran and al-ilm, right, and making istijaba to Allah and His Messenger, it is abiding by His law. And the law of Allah Azza wa Jal, within it is true life. True life. And we discussed this in the previous series about the wisdoms and benefits in the laws and the rules of Allah Azza wa Jal. We can see very, very clear examples of this. The fact that Allah Azza wa Jal has prohibited riba, usury. Now within this is life for people. Likewise, the law of al-qisas, within this is life for people. He has legislated or recommended marriage and procreation, and within this is life. He has prohibited the killing of children on account of poverty or fear of poverty. Within this is life. Right? He prohibited the pagan Arabs from killing their daughters, which they used to do. Within this is life. And so many other things which are directly saving life, or indirectly saving life, or prolonging life. Right? Such as, healthy eating and eating in moderation and, many, many other things. Everything in the Sharia is there to give people life, whether in the biological, physical sense, or whether in terms of the hearts, in terms of the life of the hearts. So here then we can add that the law of Allah Azza wa Jal, when you stick to that, then that will also give you life. Then likewise, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, من أراد السعادة العبدية فليلزم عتبة العبودية. He who desires to have eternal happiness, if you want to be eternally happy forever, then let him stick to the utmost servitude to Allah, to have utmost obedience and servitude to Allah. This is true happiness. This is true life, real life, true life you get by being obedient to Allah and, having servitude to Allah Azza wa Jal. So, we'll finish with just a number of points that we should make. So, we mentioned so far then, what are the things that make a person have a good life in the life of this world? It is Islam, Al-Iman, it is use of reason, sound reason, right? It is the Quran, Al-Ilm, Wal-Jihadu fi Sabilillah, Al-Dhikr Al-Hasan, the Ahkam of Allah, the Sharia. We mentioned all these things, right? This is what makes a good life. Now, we'll discuss that there is a false type of reasoning that some people have, whether it might be disbelievers or it might be sinful Muslims who are affected by the dunya. Right? Disbelievers or Muslims who are affected by the dunya. They have a faulty understanding. They think that whoever has wealth and riches and power and strength and abundance and luxury, that the one who has these possessions, that this is a proof that Allah is favoring them. That Allah is favoring them, right? So there are some people, if you believe in Allah, there were many who would think, well, like the pagan Arabs, right? The pagan Arabs, unlike Fir'aun, right? Their thinking was, well, I own all of these gardens, I own all of these rivers, right? I have so much wealth and possession. How can Allah, if there is a Lord, how can he choose this man, Musa, alayhi salam, how can he choose this man over me? Why would he choose this man over me when I am the wealthy person with luxury? He clearly cannot be a prophet. And likewise the pagan Arabs, they used to think, why would Allah choose Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam when there are lofty, noble people from the tribes of the Quraysh in Quraysh and some of the other tribes? Why would he choose this man? And we are the nobles, right? And they thought that they were actually being favored by Allah. Allah is actually favoring them, and this is a false prophet. He's not a messenger. So the reasoning is, how can we possibly be wrong? When we have luxury, when we have status, when we have wealth, this proves Allah must be pleased with us. And we must be correct. Right? Likewise, the same thing applies for those who don't even believe in Allah, the atheists, the materialists, and people like that. They think, we have got all the wealth, we have intelligence, the wealth, right? We got so much power with our, the wealth, the money creation and everything else, the military and everything else, right? So evolution has favored us. We are superior because we are so intelligent that we've managed through our intelligence to, control people, control nations, control their economies. We have military might, we have this. How can we possibly be wrong? How can we be wrong in what we are doing? Evolution has favored us, right? Natural selection has favored us, right? So they would think along these lines. How can we possibly be wrong, right? And so again, they're thinking like from the principle of their disbelief that this possession, luxury, affluence, right, is something that shows that they are upon the truth. However, Allah Azza wa Jal in Surah Fajr, at the beginning, Surah Al-Fajr, mentions the Iyaad and the nations of the Thamud and the Iyaad and Fir'aun. All of these nations, they had armies and they committed a great deal of corruption, right? So after mentioning how he destroyed them, right, when he poured upon the severe punishment, Allah Azza wa Jal then mentions about man. Right? He mentions some thinking psychology of a man. So he says, فَأَمَّا الْإِنسَانُ إِذَا مَبْتَلَاهُ رَبُّهُ فَأَكْرَمَهُ وَنَعَّمَهُ فَيَقُولُ رَبِّي أَكْرَمًا. As for man, when Allah tests him, when his Lord tests him, and then he gives him, he honors him, or he gives him loads of things. I mean, he enlarges his provision. He gives him loads of things. So this person thinks, indeed, my Lord, He's honored me. He's honored me because I have got so much provision. My provision has expanded. I have wealth. I have wives. I have offspring, numbering such and such. I have possessions, homes. Right? So he now thinks, this is Allah honoring me. He thinks wealth is being honored. And then another one, وَأَمَّا, and then he says, وَأَمَّا إِذَا مَبْتَلَاهُ فَقَدَرَ عَلَيْهِ رِزْقَهُ فَيَقُولُ رَبِّي أَهَانًا. But as for when Allah restricts His provision to just the bare necessities, His provision is restricted, He then says, my Lord has humiliated me. Right? So he thinks that honoring and humiliating, what is it tied to? It is tied to Allah giving you more provision and Allah reducing your provision. Right? This is completely wrong. This is wrong thinking. That's why this was mentioned here after Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned the destruction of the Iyaad, destruction of the Thamud, and destruction of Fir'aun. Because all of these nations and their leaders were thinking that having possession, having wealth, being affluent, being in ease, this is clearly a sign that Allah is favoring you. But it's not. Rather, what it is a sign is that Allah is testing you. That's why He says here, فَأَمَّا الْإِنسَانِ إِذَا مَبْتَلَاهُ. When He tests him. Right? And then he sent the second ayah, وَأَمَّا إِذَا مَبْتَلَاهُ. Right? When He tests him with restricting provision. This is actually a test. It is not a sign that Allah actually is favoring you because you are rich or affluent, and He's humiliating you because you have less possession. So in other words, this type of reasoning is incorrect. And this is the reasoning that nations fell into before, from the nations that were destroyed. And likewise the pagan Arabs to whom the messenger was sent, they also thought like this. Right? How can this poor person, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how is he being made a messenger? Over and above us, the nobles of Quraysh. How can that be? And we have the wealth. We are in charge of the Kaaba. Right? So they thought that they were actually, Allah favored them and Allah was pleased with them, when this was not the case. So the point being that Allah Azza wa Jal, the way He deals with His creation, there are certain rules, there are certain laws by which Allah deals with His creation, and sometimes we may not understand those laws. Right? So let me give you an example, and please have patience with me as I finish the rest. It's only 2 pages, inshallah. So, for example, with respect to Muslims and believers, we see that in the Quran, Allah Azza wa Jal has a certain rule or law in dealing with the people of Iman and Tawheed. What is that law? What is that law? There are many ayat in the Quran. Never does Allah change a people حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ, until they change that which is with themselves. So the Muslims and the believers, as long as they are upon Tawheed and the Sunnah, Allah will continue favoring them. But as soon as they start disobeying and falling into sin, falling into innovation and moving away from the path, then punishments will descend upon them. Right? This is why because you might sometimes ask the question, how come is it that the lands of the disbelievers are very rich, very powerful, have strong militaries, have higher standards of living, have higher life expectancies, right? How is that so when, on the other hand, we have lands of the Muslims are in chaos, turmoil, economically deprived and so on, and all the various other things. How is that so? How can that be? Right? And how can it be that those who are people of disobedience, that Allah says He will punish them and destroy them? So how come this is not applying to the disbelievers? That's because the way Allah deals with believers and the rules pertaining to them is other than the rules pertaining to the disbelievers. With the believers, it is as I described to you, that if you are upright upon Tawheed and upon the Sunnah, Allah will favor you. Allah will give you strength. Allah will give you honor. Allah will give you might. وَلِلَّهِ الْعِزَّةِ. To Allah belongs the izzah, and to the messenger and to the believers. Right? So as you depart from His guidance, then humiliation shall descend upon you. When you do certain actions, dealing in aina, forbidden transactions, cheating in the weights and measures, innovating new beliefs, new ideas into the religion, becoming split and into sects, right? All of this, you will be punished, right? You will taste fear, you will taste poverty, economic hardship, no security. You will fear all these, you will suffer all these things. As for the disbelievers, then Allah Azza wa Jal, He gives them in abundance, opens up the dunya for them, because the dunya is not worth even a drop to Him in an ocean, right? And because of their disbelief, because of their arrogance, He gives them more and more and more and more, right? To slowly bring the eventual punishment to them, right? And they are deceived in their wealth and their power and their might, right? And their standards of living and everything like this. They continue to be ungrateful, so He gives them more and more and more to establish the hujjah against them. Whereas to the Muslims and to the believers, He's giving them a taste of their sins so that they quickly turn back. This is rahmah and mercy to the believers, that they are tasting what they are tasting of punishment, on oppression and poverty, that they turn back. And to the people of kufr and shirk, right? Then He gives them a long rope so that the hujjah can be established upon them, and they have no excuse whatsoever, because they consume the favors of Allah day and night, and they remained upon their disbelief, right? So the laws are different. And that's why, for example, in the Quran, there are the disbelievers, there are the hypocrites, and there are the believers. But the hypocrites in the life of this world are to be left alone. Right? They are to be left alone. And because they are among the Muslims. However, they have a different ruling in the hereafter. So, all of these things we need to understand, and these things have been made very, very clear for us in the Quran, that, we may not fully understand the wisdoms of Allah and how He treats different people with different rules, and that there are things which are known only to Him and which will become apparent in the hereafter. And so what we should understand, that the real criterion of a good life and being favored by Allah is what we mentioned, right? It is Islam, Al-Iman, it is Taqwa, it is the Quran, Ilm, Al-Jihadu fi sabilillah, and all those other things, using your reason to obey Allah. This is where true life is, right? Whether you are rich, whether you are poor, none of that matters. And we have learned of the false reasoning of many people, of nations, and that they believe that because they have affluence, that they are somehow favored by Allah, or that they are upon the truth. This is not the case. So we'll bring our lesson today to a close with this. We finish this section, and in the next section we are going to dig further in more detail and look at some speech from Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala. We will read through his speech and explain, take some more insights about al-hayatu tayyibah, what is the good life, from the speech of Ibn al-Qayyim, inshallah ta'ala. in the next lesson. So with that, we'll conclude our lesson today. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.